Too hot for TV.
Welcome back to Doctor Who Too Hot for TV. We are the podcast that looks at all things Doctor Who Extended Universe. Today, I'm joined by a brand new guest here, but who will be familiar to listeners of other podcasts. It's James Lark. James, how are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm fantastic. It's wonderful to have you here. We've previously podcasted together on Joe Ford's podcast, Strictly Come Hamster, and now I've got you all to myself.
Absolutely, and I'm very excited to be here. I'm a fan of your podcast.
Thank you very much, and it's wonderful to have you here. I must ask you what I ask all my first-timers. How did you become a Doctor Who fan?
It's a very ordinary story, really. I had a friend at primary school who was a Doctor Who fan, and he invited me round to his house one day and showed me Daleks Invasion Earth 2150 AD,
Excellent.
And then, to seal the deal, episodes 2, 3 and 4 of Remembrance of the Daleks, and I never looked back.
Why episodes 2, 3 and 4?
I think those were the ones he had on video. It had just been broadcast,
Right.
and it was a very frustrating time for me because I know I'd seen the trailer for Remembrance of the Daleks, and I had said to my mother, "That looks cool, can I watch it?" And she had said no, because it's Coronation Street is on, and we didn't have a video recorder. And so my Doctor Who fandom began. It was birthed in a time of not being able to watch Doctor Who. And then we bought a video recorder, and you'll never guess what happened.
Did somebody cancel Doctor Who?
Somebody went and cancelled Doctor Who. So just around the time when I was suddenly able to watch it, I wasn't able to watch it.
Well, you're a prime example of why they put it against Coronation Street, to stop pesky children like you watching it because your mum wanted to watch Coronation Street.
Quite right, and it worked.
Yeah, I mean, apparently so. If that had never happened, we'd still be going now, you know? Sylvester McCoy would still be the Doctor.
He probably would.
So, what is your relationship like with spin-off media, books, comics, magazines, BBVs, all these other things?
Well, do the maths. I was not able to watch Doctor Who for most of the time that I wanted to watch it when I had become a recent fan. And yet, come the early 90s, when there's still a part of me thinking in a naive kind of 12, 13-year-old way, it's just going to be a couple of years and it's going to come back. They didn't actually say they'd cancelled it. No one said they'd cancelled it. You know, things would happen like Dimensions in Time, which very clearly advertised the fact that Sylvester McCoy was still the incumbent Doctor. It began like an episode of Doctor Who, and to someone who knew nothing about television and the way things worked, that was like dangling a little, a tantalising glimpse of what might just be around the corner. But of course, the early 90s, and this is what we're going to be talking about today at length, it was a really exciting time to be a Doctor Who fan because it seemed to me, certainly, that Doctor Who was suddenly everywhere in a way that it hadn't really been in the late 80s. It was occasionally a thing that people talked about in the playground, but apart from the rows of Target books, it wasn't kind of visible in a way that suddenly it seemed to be all over the place. Come 1993, which was a key year in the development of my fandom, there was an embarrassment of materials to find out more things about, and so the weird thing about my fandom, and I know I share this with other people, is that I although Sylvester McCoy was my Doctor, I watched a lot more of other Doctors before I ever caught up on the McCoy era, because it was so available in lots of different ways.
Well, it's this thing of all of a sudden the people that grew up watching Doctor Who in the 70s are adults, essentially, who have got a disposable income. And even if they're not fans, there's a huge amount of nostalgia for Jon Pertwee and Tom Baker. You know, my family would always tell me that it was all about Jon Pertwee and Tom Baker, and then it went rubbish when Peter Davison became the Doctor, and it just sort of fizzled out because that was the perceived law. Sometimes I think we hear that about the new series, the 20-year-old new series now, of like, it was good with David Tennant and Christopher Eccleston and maybe a bit of Matt Smith, but then it sort of fizzled out. And it's just that nostalgia of those people in that era. But all of a sudden, because television's gone 24 hours a day, there's more channels, there's cable, all these things, all of a sudden it's like, well, we need what we now call content to fill it. So why not raid the archives and have Beast Guy B weekends and BBC Two repeats of classic Doctor Who stories?
It's funny you say that perceived law of a certain generation was that it went wrong when Davison became the Doctor, because perceived law amongst my friends, and I wasn't talking to people older than myself about Doctor Who, except I suppose my dad had views, which was it all went wrong when Hartnell stopped being the Doctor. But to my friends, perceived law was absolutely that Davison was a great Doctor, because that was the Doctor that they were nostalgic about, and absolutely genuinely it was believed that basically what went wrong was Colin Baker.
Oh wow.
And that was the received wisdom was, well, he got sacked because he was so rubbish. That's when Doctor Who, and thank goodness Sylvester McCoy came back and sort of rescued it. We loved Sylvester McCoy, but until I saw a Colin Baker, and I remember when they did the repeat season, having a conversation with my friend Alex, who was a Doctor Who fan, and when we were discussing what they might repeat, I said, I wonder what they'll repeat from Colin Baker, and his reaction was, surely they're not going to repeat a Colin Baker, though. He was so convinced that was the most toxic era of the show, that the BBC wouldn't even repeat one of his.
Wow. The worst thing, though, was that when they did finally release a Colin Baker on VHS, it was bloody Twin Dilemma. You don't start with Twin... we all know you don't start with Twin Dilemma, but if, you're trying to... I guess the BBC aren't thinking about waylaying those myths at that point, but there is so much more better Colin out there than you can have chosen. But no, was it a Woolworths exclusive or a WH Smith's exclusive?
No, I did all my shopping at Smith's.
Well, there you go. It was another year, and then you get... Is Vengeance on Varos?
Certainly Mark of the Rani came out quite early on, didn't it?
Yeah, but I think, obviously, Vengeance comes out... No, Trial of a Time Lord comes out in 93, so that was sort of my big into the Colin Baker era, where I was suddenly like, oh, I really like this guy, this is really good. But for many years it was, again, perceived wisdom. Colin Baker wasn't very good, and actually he was the nasty Doctor because he strangled.
Yeah, but I couldn't afford most videos, certainly not in the early 90s, so my first Colin was when they repeated Revelation of the Daleks.
Right. And what were you won over by him?
Totally. There was the absolute surprise. First of all, because they broke it into 4 episodes. Where's the Doctor in episode 1? He's not in it very much, is he? But then, absolutely the surprise. By the end of Revelation, Colin Baker is doing what his Doctor does, which is he's owning everything, and he's being witty and confrontational. He's a great Doctor, and there was a real sense of surprise that he was so good. Though I wonder if I suspect my first Colin Baker actually was Slipback.
Ooh, good in.
Because that was released on a double cassette with the Genesis of the Daleks audio version. And again, I loved Slipback. That did exactly what it was meant to do. It appealed to young people. It was funny. It was dramatic.
There's something about the Doctor Who audio releases when there was only 3 or 4 of them that, like, Paradise of Death and Ghosts of Space were the most exciting things in the world when I was a child, because it was brand new old Doctor Who, and how could you possibly get tired of that? Well,
I had a slightly different experience because I loved Paradise of Death. And I maintain that it's perfectly listenable, and it's very well designed. It's whatever you think of the script, it's got your familiar characters playing themselves very well, and the sound design is excellent, and Peter Howell's score is excellent. And there was nothing else. I do remember when Ghosts of Space came out on cassette. That was a disappointing Christmas.
Oh, interesting. I mean, it's fairly disappointing now, but I had a great time with it. I loved it. So we've got our radio plays, but what about our new adventures and later our big finishes and things like that? Were you an avid collector? Did you pick them up where you could? Have you never read a book in your life?
When the new adventures started coming out, I was intimidated by them. I mean, when it would be 90, was it 91 or 92, the first one?
92, I think.
I didn't want stories that were too broad and too deep for the small screen. I wanted another series of Doctor Who starring Sylvester McCoy. And these books looked very different to that. The cover of the final Time Worm book where the Doctor's dancing with a skeleton in a spacesuit, it just looked... I mean, also, that's the only one that he was on the cover of. It seemed to me pretty baffling that they were releasing a series of Doctor Who, which had the logo that I recognised, but no actual images of the Doctor. And obviously turned it over and read the back, and it emblazoned on that blurb was, this is going to be very much more grown up than what we had on TV. So I wasn't interested. And then years down the line, my brother and sister clubbed together to get Shakedown for me, the novelisation. And I loved it.
Great brother and sister.
Yeah. Do you know why they bought it?
Why?
Because it had a Sontaran on the front. And by that stage, I'd borrowed a video of the Sontaran experiment. They knew that I liked Sontarans, so that was a good purchase. And I thought it was great. I mean, that's a very readable book. That's Terrance Dicks. Just kind of doing good structure, good storytelling. And it's the new adventures when they've calmed down a bit and they're not obsessively being grown up and sexy and sweary. So at that point, I kind of thought, I don't know what I was worried about. Maybe I should read some more of these new adventures. And you'll never guess what happened next.
What happened next? Did they get rid of them? Did they cancel them?
The BBC got the rights to the novels back and cancelled the new adventures just when I was getting into them. There's a bit of a pattern here, isn't there? And I wasn't interested in the BBC books because A, Paul McGann's one adventure had done nothing for me, and B, the covers were not the beautiful kind of hand-painted covers of the new adventures, but these ghastly photoshopped lodges of colour. I just thought they looked awful. So I decided not to go with the EDAs.
Covers by Black Sheep. Now, do you know what's interesting? When they launched, I remember thinking, we're in the future now. Like, oh my God, look at what... Because they did the same for the video range.
The videos
I was
as well.
like, it's not some old guy drawing pictures in a room. We're using computers and there's a time vortex made out of like CGI on the front. And I thought they were the greatest things.
Did you
I'd ever
really?
seen.
I just thought they looked awful. I was such a big fan of the drawn VHS covers.
You're right. Like, I 100% agree with you now. But when I was sort of a 14-year-old kid who desperately wanted Doctor Who to be modern and taken seriously, the cover for Devil Goblins from Neptune and the Battlefield VHS with the swirly green thing, I was like, yes, Doctor Who, finally embracing the future.
Maybe. I mean, part of the problem is clearly I'm an arch conservative, not politically in any sense, but I don't like change. So I didn't embrace the new, but maybe I was just a little bit older than you. I think I could see through those kind of smudgy photoshops they'd done, where they hadn't bothered to cut out characters properly. They'd just sort of smudged or used somebody else's hair because they couldn't get it to... I don't know.
I agree. The intern at Black Sheep is doing them and they are terrible, but just, again, I've got nostalgia for them and at the time I thought they were great. I was speaking to David J. Howe about this because, he did the book about the Virgin New Adventures with all the artwork.
Yeah.
And he said one of the reasons he'll never do one on the EDAs and the PDAs is because there's no original artwork, there's no design sketches, and actually they look a bit shit. So, like, you can't do a big coffee table book on that beautiful art because it's not that beautiful.
It's not that beautiful. Though, I mean, again, years after the event, I have been persuaded by Joe Ford in particular that there's much of a value in the EDAs, and the problem is with the EDAs, there's so bloody many of them. I started rereading the New Adventures quite some time ago because I thought it's a manageable body of work, isn't it? It's 30-something books, and they are kind of still revered by a certain type of fan who thought that these books kind of pushed it further than it had ever gone before, certainly as a kind of science fiction product. And I started at the very beginning, and that was a mistake because, of course, those early New Adventures are mostly terrible. And if they're not terrible, they are at least deeply flawed. I mean, it's a range. It's a really interesting range of books, but it's a range of books being written by a lot of inexperienced writers and edited by a very inexperienced editor. And so predictably, they're often not very good. And I understand that there are similar problems with the EDAs, but I think they're probably a more consistent range from what I've read now.
But there's like 75 of them, so like
it's a lot to. Where do you begin? I think probably you do it in arcs, don't you? I mean, you probably begin with the burning or something like that, and just take on a batch of them. But so I wasn't reading the books when Big Finish started. To go back to your question, I utterly embraced Big Finish. Back in the days when you had to send off a form on a bit of paper to get with a check.
I was fortunate enough to live in unfortunate enough to live in Birmingham, depending on your point of view. But there was a shop in Birmingham called Nostalgia and Comics that would stock them monthly. But they'd only have about 5, so you had to get in there early to get them. It wasn't like there was reams and reams of CDs in there, but that was where we picked them up. But that, for me, that was Doctor Who's back because it was the proper actors.
It was the actual actors, so no one could say it wasn't real Doctor Who. And certainly early on, there was an attempt to kind of fit it into what you expected from those doctors. It obviously, very quickly, they realised they could do something more interesting than that. But the early Big Finishes even sound very much like products of the time the doctors were on television for.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's also, they're not 85 years old at that point. They've still got some of that energy. So I'm aware that actors get older, and I know that they can't all sound the same, but it's still shocking sometimes these days when I put on a more recent one and hear Colin Baker or Sylvester McCoy.
Do you think they'll recast Colin Baker and Sylvester McCoy as they have with the doctors who have passed on? Is that going to happen?
I think they've recorded enough. Well, I sort of know. They've recorded up until their license is due for renewal in 2029. And they suspect that they certainly won't be recording by that point. And I think they would recast, but I don't think they'd do it straight away. I think it would be like 5 years after their deaths.
I thought you were going to say, I think they've recorded enough words from each of those actors that they can actually just put them in any order now to make any story.
Yeah, I think so. Well, yeah, maybe they have.
Sometimes sounds a bit like it.
Too hot for TV.
The entrance to the colony was decidedly futuristic. A crowd of workers was watching a drum majorette performing to the accompaniment of a band. The whole place had the aura of a holiday camp. Everyone was smiling and enjoying the performance.
Thank you, pilot. Mind you, I didn't say who'll come first to the festival, but never said I. But nothing succeeds like success. If at first you don't succeed, try again. That's right. What's the matter? Medoc. This is very foolish of you, Medoc. It's for your own good. Out of my way! Far too dangerous to be allowed to escape. Get out, Prince! You should have stopped him. What happened, Nola? He refused treatment in front of my guard, so I dismissed him and he made a dash for it. So get after him. He must not get away.
Too hot for TV.
So, the first thing we're going to cover today, why don't you tell us what it is?
So the first thing chronologically is the audio cassette that was released of the Macra Terror, which was released in 1992. we're also going to talk about the 1993 Doctor Who Yearbook, which was also released in 1992, confusingly. And we're going to talk about an episode of Harry Hill's Fruit Corner featuring none other than Jon Pertwee, which was broadcast in 1993. And the order in which I came to these was the Yearbook first, the Macra Terror in 1993, and then the Harry Hill. And so it's part of this golden year, which, as I said, it seemed at the time, particularly in late 92 and 1993, that Doctor Who was everywhere and very visible on the shelves in shops, and also very kind of visible on television and on the radio. So I got the Doctor Who Yearbook, the 1993 Yearbook, for my birthday, which was September 1992, and we'll talk in a bit about the sheer excitement of that Dalek on the cover and just everything in there. But it just seemed to, for someone who had missed, and I think I felt this quite deeply, that I'd missed Doctor Who when it was on. I'd hoist my flag on this ship that was already sinking. But it just felt like a bit of a golden year, and suddenly there was loads, and there was stuff that I could watch, and there was stuff that I could read, and suddenly my fandom meant something. So all of these things come from a time when actually there was more Doctor Who to enjoy than there had ever been in my life, and certainly than there had ever been when I first became interested in it.
Well, I mean, when the BBC Two repeat season happens in 1992, that's the most Doctor Who that's been on the BBC in 1 year for probably the best part of a decade, certainly since the Davison era. But Sylvester McCoy was 14 episodes a year. Colin Baker was 14 and then 22 or something like that.
Now, how many did they actually manage in 92 though?
Oh,
they broadcast the Time Meddler. They broadcast the Mind Robber, so that's 9 episodes, and I think they broadcast a Pertwee, but there was so much Pertwee on TV. Was it the Sea Devils?
It was the Sea Devils.
Was that in 92? Because there was a point where it stopped, and there was a big gap, and it stopped again, like the freaking cancellation. They didn't say that it was stopping. They didn't say whether it was coming back, and they resumed in 1993. Hence why this is a kind of a golden period. But I think resumed. Was it with the Demons, and they'd done the colouring thing, and that's what they used to launch the rest of the repeat series?
Well, I have the broadcast dates in front of me. So, January 92, The Time Meddler. February 92, Mind Robber. March, The Sea Devils, and April. Then November, The Demons.
See, right, so we have to wait until November for that repeat season to continue.
So we get 20 episodes of Doctor Who in that year, which isn't bad. It's more than we've had since Colin's first season. Sure,
but the start of that repeat season actually was a bit of a damp squib for me. I still wake up sweating over this. I had asked my dad to set up the video to record. It was the documentary Resistance is Useless, and then episode 1 of The Time Meddler. That day, I took out the video that my dad had put in to record that on to watch An American Tale, Steven Spielberg's cartoon about Fievel and his family. And I hadn't been trained in using the video recorder. It wasn't something I did. I was allowed to play videos in it, but I didn't set it up to record things. And so I watched An American Tale, took out the video, put it back on the shelf, didn't realise that I needed to replace a video in the recorder. And
oh no!
My name was dirt, because not only did we not get the documentary and episode 1 of The Time Meddler, but also we missed Coronation Street, and it was the episode where a guy got mown down by a Blackpool tram.
Right, yes, yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
So an episode that everyone was talking about, and my parents missed it. And I think it is absolutely true to say they had my mum was furious. She was so angry. And I think they then kind of sort of sat in it and went, well, we missed that significant episode. And it didn't ruin our lives exactly, and maybe it's a bit of a waste of time watching Coronation Street at all. So, ironically, my missing Doctor Who made them stop watching Coronation Street forever, the thing that had meant that I couldn't watch Doctor Who in the first place.
So you won.
Yes, let's see it in that way. But in the weeks that followed, I forgot that episode 2 of the Time Meddler was on, forgot about episode 3. So it wasn't until episode 4 of the Time Meddler that I actually got to watch some Doctor Who. So the fact that then they stopped showing them after the Sea Devils, I was just getting going.
Shocking behaviour from the BBC, to be honest. Because it was, we're going to do one from each of the Doctors, and then weirdly they showed 2 Pertwees. And I think they showed 2 Pertwees because the demons had been colourised and they wanted to show off like the colorisation. But it got us all used to the idea of a split season. So Stephen Moffat,
that's true. Yes,
was probably subconsciously thinking about that during season 6 and 7. Honest. So the Macra Terror came out on cassette on the 6th of July 1992 from BBC Audio, or whatever it was called at the time, and it was narrated by Colin Baker. News at the time. Despite the long wait for Doctor Who The Last of the Time Lords, it appears the prospective producers remain hopeful that the project will get off the ground. Co-producer George Dugdale talked to DWM in late April and was fairly confident that the movie would begin pre-production work in the summer. That is such a non-story. I just every time we do News at the Time from the 90s, there's always a movie of some sort or a TV series. But that is zero. That is not news. That is just someone going, yeah, we still hope to do it, but we haven't really made any progress. It was announced there was going to be a Doctor Who computer game, which was from a budget specialist company called Alternative Software, who want to produce a game based on Doctor Who and have licensed it from BBC Enterprises. It will feature the Daleks invading Earth. A spokesman said, "We originally wanted to set the game across a series of planets, Telos and, say, Gallifrey, but we decided it would be tidier to keep it all tied into one objective." I think the budget specialists in them in there probably kicked in and they went, okay, we'll probably just use the same sort of setup of London. But there we go.
So did that game happen?
It did happen. It became Dalek Attack.
Which I vaguely remember seeing in shops.
I had it. It's basically a platform shoot 'em up.
Yeah.
The Doctor uses a sonic screwdriver like a gun. You can be Sylvester McCoy, I think Patrick Troughton and Tom Baker, and you just with shooting Daleks that are flying around, and I think there's some Cybermen as well. It's not. I mean, it's fine. I played a lot of games like that in the 90s, but I've got maximum of 15 minutes for it now. Releases at the time, we had Cat's Cradle Witchmark from Virgin Publishing. From BBV, we had The Stranger, More Than a Messiah, and the comic strip was Ravens, featuring the 7th Doctor. Remember any of those iconic titles?
I certainly remember the first of those iconic titles, and what a gorgeous... Speaking of the beautiful hand-drawn covers, say what you like about Witchmark, but I'd put that on a wall as a poster if it was available.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, those covers are beautiful. And those early ones, especially, it's just a promise of a Doctor Who you've never seen.
Yeah.
And I couldn't read those books because I was a bit put off by the fact that they were just too challenging a read for me at the time.
They're really hard. They are hard. Although Witchmark, probably, of those early releases, is one of the most approachable. I quite like Witchmark. Yeah,
I've never read it, but I've since read a lot of the New Adventures, but I've never done any of Cat's Cradle or Time Worm. But there's something I used to own the books because it was just the promise of these adventures, and I'd just stare at the covers. I tried to read them, but the prose were, and this is laughable now, but the prose were too dense for me.
But it is dense prose. I mean, honestly, I shudder to think what would have happened if I had actually kind of taken out my pocket money and bought Transit or something. It just would have put me off Doctor Who for the rest of my life.
The weird thing is, I've read most of the New Adventures, but not those first 2 trilogies or whatever they are. Do you know, they're on I keep looking over there, they're on a shelf over there, and I just think, this Christmas or something, that's what I might do.
I would start with Cat's Cradle over Time Worm.
Okay.
But then you have to start with the Mark Platt one, which is about as dense as it gets. It's very clever.
I'm fine with that now. I've read denser books than A New Adventure.
Sure. It's Mark Platt being really ambitious. I think it's commendable. It's just not very readable.
I'm reading Lungbarrow now, and I read it 20 years ago, I reckon, and it's very interesting revisiting it now because it is full of rich ideas, but it's also quite boring at the same time.
Well, actually, Cat's Cradle, the Mark Platt one, goes very well with Lungbarrow. He's setting up ideas in that first book that he then delivers on in Lungbarrow.
Anyway, we digress. James, this podcast is about Doctor Who, the extended universe, not about the television show. But the Macra Terror is a television story. Pray tell, why are we talking about it?
Well, these cassettes are I think these cassettes are part of the extended universe. And I think that, sorry, is that tenuous?
It's fine. We're here for it. If I didn't want to cover it, I would have said no.
Well, let's start with the first cassette that I bought was The Evil of the Daleks, because the first thing I did if I was in a shop looking at what I was going to buy, Doctor Who merchandise-wise, the first thing I'd look at would be running time. Always looking to get the most bang for my buck. So Evil of the Daleks, far longer than the Macra Terror. I was so excited when these cassettes came out. And have you ever owned these?
Yes, I am a big fan of these, which is exactly why I was keen to cover them, because I don't think I saw them in the magazine because I wasn't buying the magazine regularly at that point. There was just a point where I was in W.H. Smith's with my £5 gift token that I got for my birthday or something like that. And there in the cassette section was classic Doctor Who, and it blew my tiny mind.
And they're colourful colours. So Evil of the Daleks was blue and sort of had a blue speckly background, and then badly cut out black and white pictures from around the right era. So a picture of the wrong Patrick Troughton in a different season, a Dalek from Daleks in the Dalek Invasion of Earth, a TARDIS which some intern had cut the lamp off of, and yet, badly cut out and badly kind of pasted on. The more I think about it, I should have dug out my copies.
But kind of like stylistically, sort of a bit.
They'd made they'd made a feature of cutting them out badly. Don't get me wrong. They had absolutely lent into it. And as you say, these are Doctor Who stories. This is classic Doctor Who, and these are Doctor Who stories that I'm just about old enough to know don't exist in any other form.
Mm-hmm.
So at the time, they were certainly extended universe in that here are stories that you never thought that you would see, and you're going to experience them as an audio adventure. And they're also extended universe, certainly in terms of The Evil of the Daleks, because Tom Baker is narrating The Evil of the Daleks in character.
Yeah.
So we've not just had Zoe reliving Evil of the Daleks as a kind of in-universe repeat. We've now got the Doctor, but a different regeneration of the Doctor, telling the story again to us, the listener.
When they're going to novelise this one? They did the Fraser Hines one that was a novelisation of the repeat.
That's right. They need to. Probably Tom Baker ought to write it, or someone ought to write it under the name Tom Baker to give it that authenticity in the first person. Macra Terror then was sitting on the shelf, and I'm there kind of going, it's the same amount of money and it's quite a lot shorter. And I'm less interested in the Macra than I am in the Daleks, to be honest. But I was staying with my grandmother, with my brother. In April 1993, I was staying with my brother at my grandmother's house, and she took us shopping, and we went to a bookshop. And she said, I'm going to buy you a book. And my brother found a book that was quite expensive. I don't remember what the book was. I think it was some sort of fantasy range. And at that point, my little brain is kind of whirring away, because he has spent nearly as much on a book as I know the Macra Terror costs. And I'm thinking, if my grandmother is willing to part with that amount of money for a legitimate book, can I persuade her that this cassette is basically an audio equivalent of a book, and maybe need to kind of brush past the fact that it's Doctor Who, which she will instantly recognise is maybe not as literary as her intentions for this gift of a book were. But I'd managed to persuade her that this was going to be a book equivalent. And I think she then kind of bought me and my brother a Penguin Classic or something, so that, to fulfill the kind of educational remit which we so failed to embrace. So yeah, got back home to my grandmother's house. She had a little, it was a cassette clock radio, which was in the bedroom we were staying in. So I popped on this cassette and listened to the Macra Terror through the tiny speakers of this clock radio.
Which I can only imagine enhanced the high-quality audio release that you were about to consume.
So for those of you who have not experienced this story in this way, the sound quality is really shit. I mean, this is long before Mark Ayres was coming in and cleaning stuff up. It sounds, I would say, probably about the same as it sounded when whoever recorded this off the television hit record on their whatever they were recording on. You're getting a lot of hiss, a lot of crackle. Now, I was expecting that because Eve of the Daleks was equally hissy and scratchy. The Macra Terror begins with Colin Baker introducing the story, and then you get this sort of heartbeat thing. Hiss, hiss, crackle, and it just seems to go on forever. All you're hearing is, there's no narration, no one explaining what's going on, just this hissing, and you've got to imagine I'm doing this through the tiny speakers of a clock radio as well. And then, after what seems like 5 minutes of just, you've suddenly got, and again, no explanation, no one saying anything, just this tinny single line of music. So this was a very different listening experience to The Evil of the Daleks.
So I had all of these apart from Tomb of the Cybermen, because didn't need that because they found it. I am hugely nostalgic about these. I can't remember which order I got them in. I suspect Macra Terror was the last one because, as you say, there's 2 Dalek stories and then there's Fury from the Deep, which even at that age I knew was a certified missing classic, whereas the Macra Terror was just something from Patrick Troughton's first season, which is the only good stories of the Dalek stories, right? So at least that's what fan wisdom would tell me. So I guess my expectations of the Macra Terror was, very low, even as a 11-year-old or whatever. But I took it on holiday. Every holiday I went on with my little Walkman and my over-ear earphones, I'd take these tapes and my Paradise of Death, and, I'd sit in the shade away from the heat just listening to these things. And the Macra Terror was my favourite of all.
Was it your favourite?
Yeah, and it still remains a favourite of the Troughton era. It's one of my most wanted missing episode recoveries. There's something so atmospheric about listening to this audio version because it somehow is more lost than the other 3 stories.
Yeah. I mean, not to... sorry, I suggested that I was sitting there feeling great disappointment over this crackling, hissing noise, and I think part of me was a little bit disappointed that it was so incomprehensible. You grow into it, you start to work out what's going on. The narration is quite sparse and not always helpful. I might talk a bit more about where the narration kind of fails to fill in some of the gaps. But, it, as you say, it's so atmospheric, all these sound effects, all these noises, and it's a little bit like my dad used to tape Monty Python off the telly. He had all these 90-minute cassettes of episodes of Monty Python. I first experienced Monty Python listening to it. And you can imagine those animated sections where it's just kind of, you're sitting there going, what is going on? But you can hear the audience laughing and you're going, what is happening here? And the Macra Terror was a bit like that because there were long stretches where you really couldn't tell what was going on, but you could tell that it was kind of dramatic. The music was telling you that. You'd hear people screaming or just kind of, like the final episode is mostly just sort of gas noises. And it sounded like the most exciting thing ever.
And it was the most exciting thing ever. A few years later, I picked up in a secondhand bookshop a thing called the DWB Compendium, which was basically a compilation of some of the best articles and stuff from DWB, everyone's favourite hate rag, the Daily Mail of Doctor Who fandom, if you will. But within that, it contained not all the telesnaps, because they hadn't all been found, but a huge selection of them, blown up to much bigger than we'd see them when DWM found all the others.
Oh, really?
I mean, these may have even been different ones taken off the screen by somebody else, but there must have been 10 pages of pictures. And I used to sit there flicking through, listening to my audio, flicking through the pages of it, just trying to imagine what I was watching. And I'd get things wrong, like I confused like the actor playing the pilot and the chief of security or whatever, and it was mind-blowing one day when I suddenly discovered that was the other actor. But it was just getting to know these stories a little bit. And the Macra Terror animation is probably my favourite of the animations, but it sheds a different light on the story, and I think if they found it, it would shed a different light on the story. But 11-year-old me sat there listening to it in the dark, or by a swimming pool in the blazing sunshine. It was oozing with atmosphere, and it felt quite terrifying. In fact, all 4 of those audio stories did, in a way that I think it's probably the few times where I did think Doctor Who was a little bit scary, and I think it was the unknown, but not the unknown in the sense of what's that round the corner, of like, what the fuck is going on here?
Oh, yeah. There, in the darkness, waiting. Just full of atmosphere. I don't know about you, but I prefer listening to these stories. I'm full of admiration for the animations. I do like the Macra Terror animation, but going back to this cassette recording reminded me of how the way your imagination fills in the gaps from the scant information that you're sometimes given about it.
I like to watch the animations because I like to see what they do with them, and I, as you say, admire what they're doing on a low budget. But once I've watched them once, I'll probably go back to the audio versions if I want to revisit the story.
I mean, the telesnaps and the animations have filled in bits of this story that I never had the first idea of what was going on. I think John Nathan Turner wrote the narration for
He
these,
did.
And it's a little bit of a John Nathan Turner sits in the pub and does half an hour's work on the back of a fag packet. That'll do. Because I was listening to episode 1 and just thinking, it's a very idiosyncratic style of narration. It begins, the entrance to the colony was decidedly futuristic. A crowd of workers were watching a drum majorette performing, and like in your head, you're like, so hang on, it's decidedly futuristic, but then there's a crowd of workers watching a drum majorette, and then the whole place had the aura of a holiday camp. That's a lot of contradictory images to paint within a single paragraph. And all you're getting on the soundtrack is this music going on and on and on and on. He doesn't introduce the characters. You've no idea who any of these people are. You just have to guess from the dialogue.
Also, 11-year-old me wouldn't have known what a drum majorette was. And when you see the animations, there isn't really an air of... And the telesnaps, there's not really an air of a holiday camp. It's just the music, if anything, that sounds weirdly holiday campy. But it's like, yeah, as you say, he's not putting a lot of effort into it.
Yeah.
And you can see why. The first CD release is basically a spruced up version of this, but later on they get Annika Wills to do another narration, because A, because she's era appropriate, and B, to sort of fill in the blanks a bit more. And they try not to have, a minute of just music or soundscape, which works better, but
you lose the mystery of
exactly
what is going on here. What and you would sit there kind of waiting for, when's the next clue going to come, and is it going to be a character speaking, or might Colin come and just give us a hint? I was always particularly baffled by the episode 2 cliffhanger, because he doesn't really tell you what's happening. And then you get a claw whipped into the picture and dragged him away, and then you just have screaming, and Polly's going, it's the Macra, they're in control. And you're like, what just happened?
Yeah. What is a Macra,
Yeah, well, all we get is the crab. This is the episode 1 cliffhanger is pretty baffling. The crab-like creature was hideous. Now, a crab-like creature is what, about as big as your hand, or like there's no clues are given except for the front cover, which has got a pretty unclear picture. The one picture of a Macra.
Yeah, and the scales are wrong there.
Yeah.
So it's like, as you say, there's no clue to the size. Colin, as always, is the consummate professional and delivers his narration in a suitable style. But again, it's an easy day's work for Colin. How long does he have to be there to say all those things? I mean, what is there? 6 minutes of Colin throughout it?
Not very much. I'm curious as to why Tom does his in the first person and Colin narrates in the third person. And the other thing that's slightly odd about it is that it's all narrated in the past tense, which is not what we're used to from the more recent releases, where I think, as is appropriate for an unfolding audio drama, it's related in the present tense. It sort of makes sense for the Fourth Doctor to be recalling a thing and talking in the past tense, but for Colin to be narrating in the third person in the past tense is very odd and distanced from the action.
So they were all written by JNT, as you say, and they were all written in the style of this one. It was Tom who walked in on the day and sort of went, I think I should narrate this as the Doctor, which makes sense and sounds very Tom. And you can imagine them furiously going through the script as it was, scribbling out the Doctors and replacing it with I. But I think it works better when Tom's doing it in character on Evil of the Daleks.
I think it does, yeah.
I've not heard the Tomb of the Cybermen one, but I'm assuming Pertwee is just giving another sort of sparse unfolding of events. I don't think he does.
It's very, very sparse, yeah. It's not in character.
Yeah. Part of me feels like I should go and listen to that.
I bought the Tomb of the Cybermen on cassette, not realising that they'd found it. And what they'd done is they'd released the cassette because clearly they'd recorded it. They'd recorded Pertwee, so they were going to get their money's worth. They just subtly deleted the Missing Adventure surtitle.
It's weird that this range didn't continue, don't you think? I mean, maybe they didn't sell well. I mean, there was certainly a backlash still at the time against anything JNT was involved with, including a backlash to things like the Years tapes, which I always thought were amazing treasure troves. But fans were very much like, why are you releasing these part missing stories? Wait until the episodes show up and release them in full, naively, and also like release the full adventures first and then get to these. So I can imagine fans also turning their nose up a little bit at these audio releases. I think there was still a belief in the 90s that all the episodes would show up eventually.
I don't know when they stopped releasing the cassettes, because they must have covered a couple of years' worth.
So the cassette of Evil of the Daleks was July 92.
And Ghosts of N-Space was released with the same branding. I mean, that's those Pertwee audios were released with the same kind of cutout style. Yeah. So Ghosts of N-Space must have been 1996.
Yeah, but it was recorded and then delayed for ages. So I think there was a bit of a gap. Essentially, we had this lot because Evil was 92 as well. And then Fury from the Deep was 1993. So yeah, 1993, Paradise Death, then you've got a couple of years gap. And presumably they just went, well, this is the logo and design for Doctor Who audios. And then it wouldn't be until I think it's 98 when The Massacre comes out on CD.
So what sort of happens also is the TV movie.
Yeah.
Nothing else is going to come out in the same way after that. But it does sound as though they slightly just gave up on it after 93.
I wonder if these were the best quality audios they had of those, recorded off someone's television. And perhaps, because I haven't got them anymore, but I'd certainly heard some of the original recordings that circulated in fandom, and some of them were basically unlistenable. So these sort of 4 or 5 titles could well have been the best you could possibly get.
They're also going to be thinking, if they're not selling, they're probably selling perfectly well. They're probably not selling like I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue was selling on cassette. You know what I mean? And if Power of the Daleks is not selling brilliantly, what are their expectations going to be for releasing a hissing crackly version of a story called The Massacre? They're probably rightly thinking it's not going to be worth it.
Do you think you can get enough of the story though from what is presented there to make sense of it all?
Absolutely, totally. Almost enhanced by the fact that you don't know everything that's going on, because it's a medium that's designed for re-listening, right? So that you can go to your swimming pool or your shady corner and keep listening to the same thing over and over again. And I listen to these ad nauseum. I've listened to these Troughton stories so many times and discovered something new each time, discovered new nuances in Patrick Troughton's performance, little noises, little sounds, started to make links between the little recorder tune that he plays in the Macra Terror, which he first played in The Power of the Daleks.
There's enough there, and again, just to get lost in this weird world of, obscure sounds, and if it doesn't set off your tinnitus, it's definitely worth listening to. Is there anything else you want to say on this one?
One thing that struck me listening to it again was how good Michael Craze is in this, and how he's playing such a troubled version of Ben when his mind gets taken over. But I remember the impact this had on my understanding of Ben as a character, because this was the first story I'd heard with Ben in,
right? And
he's not Ben for most of it. He drops the Cockney when he's under the Macra control. He's much more well spoken. I absolutely remember that kind of punch the air triumph in the final episode where finally he kind of regains control of himself. But until I got the tape of The Power of the Daleks, that's a character that I felt like I didn't really know properly, because he's playing against types so well in those scenes.
Again, at this point in your fandom, you're just piecing together bits of the show and who these people are. And because I'd seen some Second Doctor stuff, I just associate the Second Doctor, I mean, at the time, largely with Jamie and Zoe, because it was the season 6 stuff they were releasing, because that's what existed in the archives. So Ben and Polly were almost this unknown commodity, because I don't think there was a story out with them on video at that point. War Machines was the only full one that exists, I want to say, and that didn't come out for a while.
And that didn't come out for ages, yeah. And then, having said that, there are large moments of this story where you're having to fill in a lot of gaps and the pictures are not being painted by the narration. There is one memorable moment in episode 2 where a very clear picture is painted, and it's this moment. In the cubicle, Ben was fast asleep, while Jamie was tossing restlessly.
Yeah, I mean, thank you, JNT. You've also got to wonder, what did JNT have to piece these things together? Because I guess he's going back to any scripts that exist.
He might have had a camera script. I don't know.
It is a very lost bit of television, but I suppose a novelisation had happened at that point, so I guess if you were smart, you could sort of jump between the novelisation, any script that existed, and this. But then he's not in the Doctor Who office anymore, so he's got to get access to those things.
When did he leave the Doctor Who office?
I think it's late 1990 that he departs the office.
Did he just leave with a load of scripts in?
I mean, reportedly, yes. But I don't think it was the Macra Terror.
I mean, it might explain why the narration is so sparse, in that he's got a target novelisation and he's listening to this hissing wall of sound and going, well, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah. How am I supposed to figure this out? And then he puts his invoice in for £50 or whatever BBC Enterprises were paying at the time, and he's straight off down the wine bar down the road for a few drinks with Tom Baker.
But thank goodness that he did it. I know that they look kind of a bit shonky and a bit half-assed to us, but I agree with you about the Years tapes. I think they're fascinating, and I think at the time they were all we had.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just felt like, again, all these gateways to knowing a little bit more about the show that you loved, but you were learning all about for the first time.
Yeah.
And sort of picking up new facts and new ideas of characters, as you say with Ben. And these weird glimpses into stories that you didn't quite know the full story of, even after you'd listened to the audio of. And as with the Years tapes, watching a solitary episode of The Crusade by itself. I'm not sure I ever knew what The Crusade was about when I was a kid until The Lion showed up and you got those two missing episodes on CD. But it was just I will watch 25 minutes of this weird thing set in history, which has got no monsters, because that's how they did it back then. And yeah, so I'm very grateful for JNT, not just for keeping the show on the air, but also when it went away, just trying to pull all this stuff together. And I know he was doing it to make a few quid, and sadly he wasn't getting much other work, but I think this was vital stuff in my development as a fan.
Yeah.
So if we have nothing else to say, then we must rate it. A clanger, a banger, or an average meander. What say you?
I'm going with banger.
I agree. It may not be the best version of this story that we can get now, but back in the day, this was essential listening, and it was in a little box with my Guns N' Roses album and my Macra Terror, and that is all I needed as a 11-year-old kid.
And going back to it, I have to say, listening back to it, I was filled with nostalgia for what this was, which was a tantalizing glimpse into something that otherwise we knew nothing about.
And I hope for the people listening, like, we haven't gone too deep on the story because everybody knows the story of the Macra Terror now. You've got the DVD and the book and all these other things. But this is what I want to do here is cover the format of the missing audio story, which falls within the remit of the podcast.
Yes, I mean, I entirely agree with you about this story, though. I think it's one of the great Troughtons.
Absolutely.
Love it.
And if someone can dig up an episode of it somewhere, I don't need it all. I just need episode 2 or something like that. I'll be fine.
Yeah. Please check your local car boot sales and churches.
Nobody sells anything valuable at car boot sales anymore, do they?
No.
It's just all old tat.
Too hot for TV.
The next thing we're going to look at is the Doctor Who Yearbook 1993, which was released in September of 1992 from Marvel Comics. News at the time, rumours in Doctor Who magazine of future VHS releases. These included missing stories, a bit like we were discussing before, of The Invasion, The Reign of Terror, and The 10th Planet, all with links from Nicholas Courtney, Carol Ann Ford and Michael Craze, respectively. Now, The Invasion materialised. The other two were recorded, but did not. There was also, John Nathan Turner was trying to put together a few more videos, including Doctor Who, the documentaries, which would feature Resistance is Useless and Who's Doctor Who. Never happened. The Years tapes would continue with the Colin Baker years, followed by the Peter Davison years and the McCoy years. Obviously,
never
happened. A lot of them never materialised. Sad times. There is no reason why the BBC should have ever picked those things up again years later with DVD or Blu-ray or whatever, but my heart will always miss the Davison years and the McCoy years.
What would they have done with McCoy especially? How do you make a whole...
I mean, you just do what they did with Colin, don't you? And just get him watching a bunch of clips.
I mean, actually, the Colin one is pretty good because it's got so much archive stuff. It's got interviews and things like that. So there's plenty of stuff.
I think that's what they would have had to do. But it would have been slim pickings. Releases at the time, we had the Tom Baker years and Earthshock on VHS. From Virgin Publishing, we had the Doctor Who book The Monsters, and the comic strip was Memorial, featuring the 7th Doctor and Ace.
Too hot for TV.
Did you pick this up at the time? I can't remember. What did you say?
I picked this up. This was, when was it released exactly? Because...
September.
Yeah, so I must have been one of the first recipients because I'm on my birthday's 3rd of September. So
I think I got this at the time as well. And I remember picking up Doctor Who annuals from car boot sales. And even as a 9...
Do you remember, like you say, car boot sales? They used to be full of great stuff.
Yeah.
And there was always a Doctor Who annual, wasn't there?
Yeah. And I was always disappointed by Doctor Who annuals because they are and will always remain, for Doctors 1 to 6, a pile of old shit. They are tie-in, disposable rubbish, full of fantastical worlds and stupid adventures. But even as a kid, I remember thinking, this is not very good. So... Much to my surprise, I had the 92 one as well.
Yeah.
Somebody had made what looked like a Doctor Who annual, but with love, care, and details that I actually cared about and new stories. So, I mean, the 92, they ran till 96, I think.
They did, yeah.
I've still got them all at my dad's house, and I bloody love these because they are done with the care that a Doctor Who annual should be. So how did young James find these?
Well, young James found the 1992 one at Christmas. So our local WH Smiths had a copy of Peter Haining's A Celebration, and I had been on and on at my dad, and I really wanted it. And I was quite scared. There was only one copy, and it was clearly a bit battered. And it was the thing, when we went shopping, it was the thing that I'd always head straight for and pick up and browse through and everything in that book looks amazing and old because it's all in these black and white photos. And I remember my dad at one point coming over and picking up the Doctor Who yearbook and saying, "Is this the sort of thing you're into?" And I thought what he was actually trying to do was fob me off with a cheaper, slimmer volume and not get the Haining. And I was like, yeah, well, it looks a little bit simplistic compared to this other big one that I really want. But what had actually happened was that he had spotted that the Peter Haining book had a torn cover, and he actually struck a deal. He took it to the counter and was like, "I think you need to give me maybe some money off another book for it." And he got me both. And
Great parenting.
And in the event, the yearbook was the one that was even more. I mean, I was very excited by a celebration, but the 92 yearbook was a bit of a primer for new fans. And of course, I was in that stage of still discovering about the show. It had the story listings, and it had articles that were all about they were series overviews. And then I remember seeing the advert in Doctor Who magazine, which I didn't buy. I just went to WH Smith's and read it in the shop. Got my grubby fingers all over it. And I remember seeing the advert for the yearbook. And I mean, what can I say? This image just... it's an Imperial Dalek, but taken from a low angle. It's gorgeous.
They've taken the care, whoever took that photo of the Imperial Dalek, to make the Daleks look menacing in the way that so many publicity photos of the 80s fail to do.
Yeah, and it's gleaming in the sun, and you've got the shuttlecraft behind it. And I also think, I mean, it's a colourful design. It's very of its time, but it's got the diamond logo and this beautiful array of headshots of the Doctors running down the side. And having enjoyed the 1992 yearbook, I could not wait to get my hands on this. And I do feel, kind of going forward a bit, that there's a slight law of diminishing returns with the later yearbooks. They sort of run out of things to put in them.
Yeah.
And they become slightly more like actual yearbooks in that they're talking about things that have actually happened. Like there are articles about the Children in Need episode and more than 30 years in the TARDIS.
Yeah.
But in 1993, they're still kind of exploring the programme as a whole. They're still in that kind of golden period where it's not all been written about already.
And most importantly, the information they're giving you that isn't stories is about Doctor Who, because the annuals would quite often be like, here's a profile on the planet Neptune, or how feasible is rocket travel? And it's like, I don't care about that as a Doctor Who fan. I'm sorry. I'm not here for the science. I'm here for John Nathan Turner telling me about the making of the Visitation or something like that.
Here's a word search about rock types. Yeah.
Yeah, none of that in this.
No, absolutely. Very, and quite earnest, really. I mean, there are some comic articles, but the general tone is kind of taking it quite seriously and sort of heading towards what Doctor Who magazine was going to become as the 90s wore on, which was wonderfully pretentious and written by people with genuinely academic chops, so it could actually kind of do quite deep dives into stuff.
But also there's some humour within here and we're not taking the show too seriously.
There is. I mean, I'm not sure how funny the humour is.
But
it's definitely showing that we can have a little dig at ourselves as Doctor Who fans.
Yeah. The first thing I'm struck by when I open it, immediately, for no reason, there is a double-page spread from Revelation of the Daleks. I didn't know it was Revelation of the Daleks at the time. It's just the TARDIS on a snowy landscape, and it looks like the most alien world Doctor Who's ever visited. And I'm instantly in. I'm like, this photo represents what Doctor Who is to, the 10-year-old me. And
so
it's just
beautiful,
impossible worlds.
Yeah. And it's beautifully laid out as well. Just the TARDIS is on one of the pages, and the rest of it is just light shining through the trees and the fog and the snow. It's gorgeous.
I mean, the pictures throughout this are amazing.
They're really good, aren't they?
The photos, I think, would have been the first time I'd seen quite a few of them. There's a photo of from Dalek's master plan in colour, and again, the Dalek shot from below that looks amazing. I think it's probably the first time I saw a Fendal, and just loads of exciting images mixed in with some great art. So There's some factual features within there. There's three sort of main ones. One is looking at invaders from outer space to the planet Earth. Others looking at people who manipulated minds. And the other one is on John Nathan Turner's years tapes, etc., things like that. So what do we get from these? Like, are they primers for people who don't know all about Doctor Who, or is it a bit more in depth?
I don't think it's in much depth at all. Reading them now, so the two Justin Richards articles are about two different types of invasions of Earth and invasions of the mind, and there's nothing particularly deep going on here. I'm not even sure they're terribly well structured. They are just lists of different things that have happened. But at the time, this was the most exciting thing to read, because it's just telling you, and then this happened in this story, or this group of aliens did this, but also this, at a time when most of it was not available. As is clear from at the end of each of these articles, there is a video log and a list of where you can watch some of these stories, which in the case of the first article, it's just 9 stories, and he's referenced very many more than 9. So there was, again, this kind of tantalizing aspect to this whole thing, which is, you can see some of this now, but there's a whole world about, I mean, at the time, as a 13-year-old, I mean, well, how does he get to know all of this? It just seemed like an impossible wealth of knowledge about an impossibly huge body of work. So I didn't mind there was just a list of things happening, because every mention of a different monster, a different story, was, here's another thing that you're probably never going to get to see.
It's absolutely stuff that you don't have to be a big fan, but again, at our respective ages at the time, it would have just been like there's more of this stuff that you say, I want to see, I might never get to see, because satellite television was still an impossibly expensive thing at the time, according to my parents. So it wasn't like these things would be ever on rotation on a Sunday morning or a weeknight. It was just we were at the behest of whatever the BBC was going to release. I love the fact they jump into JNT's years tapes and special releases, because again, it makes the program feel current. There's new stuff being made, and again, it doesn't give you any particular inside gossip or anything like that. You're not getting any exclusives, but it's just there's a couple of nice pictures, especially one of Tom at the Museum of the Moving Image in his Mac.
Yes,
beautiful color picture from the lion, and it's like, what exciting stuff.
Well, of course, this is an article about things that you can watch, unlike the other two where you're reading it going, well, most of this stuff is not available. So there was that excitement. I mean, I didn't get the Tom Baker years at the time, but he puts in a paragraph about the concept, which was to show him clips without telling him what was going to happen and just to film his responses. And I thought that sounded like the best idea ever. The John Nathan Turner article is very matter of fact, but it's a little bit defensive in places, isn't it?
Yeah. John knows. I mean, this is the official Doctor Who yearbook, and he certainly knows what people are saying over in DWB about these releases, as I mentioned earlier, in terms of the response from some fans as to why they're releasing this old tat when, X story isn't available and it's got all its episodes existing.
As they were delighted with the end results, Ms. Mills and her assistant David Jackson took me out to lunch. It was they who approached me with regard to other Doctor Who projects, contrary to reports elsewhere. There's just this slight tone running through it of people are saying this about me, and there are a few other bits where it's implied that he's aware of the criticisms, and he's sort of pointing out how he takes everything on board, but he can't do what every single person wants.
And at the end of it, he talks a little bit about BBC Enterprises are wanting to do a straight-to-video adventure next year that he's pretty sure he'll be involved in, and it's like, no, I mean, ultimately it didn't happen, but no, you weren't. You were given the boot there, my friend, unfortunately. And we also there's a couple of lighter-hearted articles, I guess you'd say, on toys and record releases. And this is something that, at the time, I was slightly disappointed with, because I'd seen David J. Howe used to have a regular or semi-regular bit in Doctor Who magazine where he'd take a look at old toys, and they were always fascinating. And this one, I felt at the time, took a bit too much of the Mickey out of my favourite TV show. I want to see Dalek death rays in the 60s.
At the time, I didn't even know if these things existed. No, really, because some of them are, when you read it, pretty ridiculous. I was like, is this just a comedy? What if these things... I didn't know that these Doctor Who records listed actually were there. I thought they might have faked up some covers.
Yeah, no, fair.
I had no idea that Doctor in Distress was an actual real thing. Reading it now, it feels a little bit straight-laced. There are no jokes here. It's just kind of going through some Doctor Who records. But at the time, I thought it was a hilarious alternative charts of some made-up stuff.
Again, just little bits of merch you possibly hadn't seen, but I was, I wanted more underpants, less records, if I'm perfectly honest.
Also, so he goes through what should a Doctor Who fan wear. The final section is in the pockets. Just about anything, really, but the considered fan will limit the items to those really relevant to his mission in life. Obvious essentials are a bag of jelly babies. The superior fan can substitute licorice all sorts, as long as he can explain why. Or a junior-sized bottle of gin, a sonic screwdriver, imported from America at ludicrous cost, a yo-yo, a Batmobile model, and so it goes on. Now, were you the kind of child who would have read that and maybe taken it not as a comic paragraph?
Absolutely, yes.
But absolutely, this is what you need to... Did I go to school with a yo-yo in my blazer pocket from then on? Yes, I did.
Yeah, no, we've all made terrible mistakes in our lives, and I did. We've all got David Howe to blame, unfortunately.
Yep, thanks, Dave.
Also within there, we get some monster files.
Well, that's just filler, isn't it?
Yeah, that was the stuff that even as a kid, because it was all the monsters that you knew already, so I wasn't learning anything new, but there are some illustrations of the inside of a Yeti and the inside of a Dalek, which were thoroughly exciting to...
I mean, the Yeti, you can take or leave the Yeti, but that picture of the inside of a Dalek is amazing. Absolutely brilliant. And also there's one of the sonic screwdriver.
And we also get that redesign of a Dalek that for years I thought was a real thing they were going to do, but actually it was just Raymond Cusick commissioned to do something for the magazine. But always good to see it show up, I mean, it's not a patch.
It's kind of rubbish, isn't it? But
yeah,
it's a bit kinky. It's got a whiplash stinger, range 4 meters. But the anatomy of the Imperial Dalek, and just I would absolutely pore over these for hours, studying them, planning how I could make my own.
Yeah, it's incredibly graphic in a way, and sort of, it's the terrifying inside of the Dalek you never quite got on television.
This anatomy has been done in various publications over the years, hasn't it? I don't think this is the first example, but I think this might be the best.
No, I agree. I mean, it just looks hideous and terrifying. And the fact you can sort of recognise all the organs, and it's got fingers and a spine, and it's like, it really sells the thing that these are mutated humanoids.
And it's got kind of all of its innards sort of housed in a globe underneath the creature itself.
Yeah, which makes you wonder what they're eating. Never thought about a Dalek's diet before, but they must be getting some sort of nutrients, right?
Yeah, so I'm going to study the diagram, see if there's any clues.
There's a liver and a pancreas, maybe?
There is a liver and a pancreas. Why would they need a liver and a pancreas?
Oh, well, this has ruined my childhood now.
Why do they need a spine for that matter? Mutant spine. Oh, various life support, blood and drug administration tubes.
Oh.
Maybe they need to be plugged into something. Maybe they actually do need to go and feed.
The diet of the Daleks is the big finish that we've all been waiting for. While we're on Daleks, there is a comic strip.
Oh, yes.
It's presented in 2 parts in this, which, quite frankly, is really good, but B, is definitely more adult, I think, than a lot of young children will have experienced Doctor Who as at the time.
Yeah, it's quite nasty. I'm going to put it out there straight away that of all the cartoon strips in the yearbooks, this is the standout one.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a brilliant tale. It's definitely from people who want Doctor Who to be taken seriously. It's this sort of Earth shock version of Doctor Who. It's
got a New Adventures vibe as well, and it's the 7th Doctor and Ace is dressed in a one-piece New Adventures style grown-up Ace mould.
Kinky Ace.
And she's wielding big guns, and the story itself is about mutating embryo babies mutating into Daleks, which is it's pretty nasty. It's interesting. It's got it's the punchline. Spoilers to the first part of this cartoon is the Doctor's been muttering eggs and stir, and this turns out to be not about eggs, as in what you'd use to make a souffle, but exterminate. So Moffat wasn't the first one to use eggs as an in to the Daleks.
It's not like Stephen Moffat to borrow an idea consciously or subconsciously from 90s spin-off media. So, I like the setup for it. It's a standard issue. They land on a spaceship. Somebody's dead. They're accused of doing it. People are going mad. There's something actually going wrong with the Doctor. And then you get this fantastic cliffhanger of Daleks sort of bursting through an airlock and exterminating someone. And it just looks bloody great. Again,
it looks amazing. It's a single page frame and it's brilliant.
But when we get into as you say, we get into the second part of it, and it's the ship has been carrying human embryos that they've been breeding in outer space, and the Daleks are mutating them. And there's actually some pretty horrific imagery of these baby Daleks. They're green humanoid babies that have turned green and have got all the tendrils and things like that. And there's one stuck to the side of a Dalek and they're clambering all over the walls. And then we see one within a Dalek. And actually, is it possibly a step too far?
I think they're kind of cute.
I think it just goes to show how nobody from the BBC was watching
what
was going on with their brand at that point, because I do not believe you would get away with this now.
I mean, they don't look like... We know they've been mutated from embryos. We've seen the embryos in tubes, but they are green and they've got tentacles and they've got evil gremlin faces. So the actual imagery is less horrific than the concept itself.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know. I think it's... There was something about it this time, and I'm not... I'm not a prude in any sense, but it was just, I was like, I think that's quite a disturbing idea. But as you say, it's probably more in the idea than the imagery. I also think the Daleks look bloody good in this one.
It's Lee Sullivan, and boy, does he know how to draw a Dalek.
Because he's sort of picks the best sort of element. So they're kind of tall and imposing, a bit like the movie Daleks. They've got the big base like the movie Daleks as well, but then there's a feel of the 80s Daleks and the Genesis Daleks in there, and I just think he knows how to draw a Dalek well.
And they're different colours as well.
Yeah.
He's even got the Planet of the Daleks, gold, black one.
Yeah. I also think he captures McCoy really well, and this transformation that McCoy has, this sweaty sort of... I mean, it looks like he's put a few pounds on McCoy in this, but I guess that's what you do if you're an 80s Doctor for the course of your time. But it is... I think it looks great. It's wrapped up very quickly because they don't have much time to do it. Big explosion, classic Dalek saucer exploding, but it looks brilliant.
Does look great. I turned this into an audio play once.
Did you?
Yes.
Recently or?
No. A very long time ago.
Okay. Have you got it?
Probably somewhere with my Macra Terror cassettes.
Amazing. Let's release it.
Okay, well, no, we should. I'll see if Big Finish will add it to their big pile of unreleased stuff.
Amazing. There's a lot of fiction in this, some short stories, brief encounters.
I used to find the brief encounters frustrating because they're not stories, are they? They're vignettes.
No. Yeah, and it's these ones essentially seem to be the Doctors going back to see somebody from their past or sometimes future one more time.
Well, 3 in particular deal with sort of unfinished business with companions, I think with varying degrees of success. So there's a story by Paul Cornell called Country of the Blind, which is it's doing that kind of New Adventures thing of filling in continuity and gaps that really didn't need filling in. And it's Liz Shaw coming to say goodbye to the third Doctor, but at the same time, he's getting in why the unit lab is repainted, and it's Mike Yates coming through. It just feels like a very laboured telling of a transition that we don't really care about. Whereas the one that has the Fourth Doctor coming to properly say goodbye to Sarah Jane, which is by Terence Dix, just feels to me much better judged. And it's obviously one we've since seen a version of on television. So canonically, I think this brief encounter is probably now
void, null and void,
cancelled. But it's beautifully written, I think.
And I think that's the difference between someone like Paul Cornell at this point, who's very much a fan writer, going, I need to fill in the continuity points, whereas Terence Dix is going, I don't think that ending was quite handled well for those two characters, so I can do something in a page and a half that just adds a bit more weight to the quite touching scene that we got on television. So one's trying to tick boxes, the other one's going, what's the emotional journey over this page and a half for these characters?
I loved this time round the one called Dream Little Dream, which is Nigel Robinson, in which he imagines that Zoe, once plugged in to the TARDIS telepathic circuits to watch Evil of the Daleks, continues just dreaming the next 23 years of Doctor Who. And the story imagines that none of it happened and that Patrick Troughton is still the Doctor and has never heard of Gallifrey. And it's all just gone on in Zoe's head. I
think that's it's a lovely little vignette, as you say, that just sort of adds something extra to it. They're all largely disposable and there's not much meat to them. I wouldn't do a Too Hot for TV where I just looked at a bunch of brief encounters, because I just don't think, unless somebody comes to me and goes, this is the greatest Doctor Who story ever told. But a lot of the time it just feels a bit like a little extra scene that you're missing from a story somewhere.
There's one attempt to tell a story, and that's Colin Baker's story about the Sixth Doctor. And I used to like this one the best because it was actually doing a story, but reading it now, it begins with a lengthy kind of Douglas Adams pastiche, and then runs out of time and just kind of does a précis of a story. It reads like a synopsis for a story that needs a much longer word count.
Yeah, they certainly try to cram a lot in, and it's very wordy, like in a big sort of verbose vocabulary in a way, because that's how Colin speaks. As
I recall, they started to up the word count of these brief encounters. Maybe they even stopped calling them brief encounters in the later yearbooks, and they did actually make for more satisfying, more like the old annuals, in fact, but more coherent than that.
Yeah, here they've gone, we need to get all the Doctors in. So the Seventh Doctor is represented by the comic strips, and we need a story for each of the other six. And I think they're less inclined to do that in the later books, but I could be wrong. But yeah, I do think they get longer because it's just not enough time to tell a story, really. Any other articles or things in there you want to draw people's attention to?
Well, only the next to this beautiful Lee Sullivan diagram of the sonic screwdriver, which was the kind of thing I would sit down and make out of cardboard at the time. There was a Batman annual that had a back page illustration of Batman's utility belt and all the different compartments.
You've woken a memory.
When I was 8 years old, I built a utility belt.
Oh my God.
And my goodness, I was proud of that thing.
I bet.
I'm not sure I ever really got round to building a sonic screwdriver, but it was I had secondary school by then, didn't really have time or the resources, but I would look at this picture and it's accompanied by an article by Andrew Pixley about the different uses of the sonic screwdriver. It's not, in fact, entirely accurate, but I think probably for the time. So he says that the Doctor uses a sonic screwdriver to open the garage doors in Inferno. It's definitely not the sonic screwdriver, but probably the quality of the video at the time, it looked like it. But that, again, for me, just absolute catnip to read a list of things the sonic screwdriver did in stories that I'd not seen.
You could do a whole book on it now, though, because it's got many more uses. You could do the sonic screwdriver annual.
No, or iSonic, the sonic screwdriver story from the Sonic's perspective.
Absolutely. I look forward to that coming soon from BBC Books. Amazing. So we must once again rate it. Is it a clanger, a banger, or an average meander?
I mean, objectively, now, it's maybe a bit of an average meander. There's a lot of bits of it that I'm not going to go back to and read.
Sure. If you're writing an article on Doctor Who, this isn't your reference point, You're not citing anything in here.
But no, it's a banger. What am I saying? Like, this is an absolute banger. Essential and beautiful.
It's a nostalgic banger from a bygone time where just soaking up bits of the show and its mythology came in many forms, and you kind of didn't expect it to come in this because the annuals were so bad.
Too hot for TV.
The final thing we're going to cover today is Harry Hill's Fruit Corner, Lords and Ladies, which was broadcast on the 18th of November 1993. News at the time, the Ice Warriors would return in the new adventures. This would ultimately be Gary Russell's novel Legacy, and BBC Video would be slashing the prices to $7.99 on selected titles.
What a time to be alive.
My video collection expanded somewhat when they were $7.99 because birthdays, Christmas, I could ask for multiple titles in a way that I might only have got one or two before, so exciting times.
It coincided with my parents' decision to teach me about budgeting by giving me a month's worth of pocket money, including the money that I was to spend on my own clothes. And I didn't wear any new clothes for about 4 years, but I did get a lot of Doctor Who VHS.
Amazing. I mean, a worthwhile spend. And is it still the same now? You know?
Well, I'm still wearing the same clothes. Yes.
Yeah, you know, like, oh, well, the collection's out this month. Or I could get some new boxer shorts and socks. And you're like, no, I'm going for the collection.
Keep darning those socks. It's the only way.
Releases at the time, we had the new adventure, The Dimension Riders, the Sixth Doctor Handbook, and Doctor Who's 30th anniversary was marked with a cover appearance on the Radio Times. And on television, we had Dimensions in Time and 30 Years in the TARDIS, and the comic strip was time and time again featuring the 7th Doctor, Ace and Benny, and pretty much every other Doctor companion, and a shitload of villains too. So here we are, in Doctor Who's glorious 30th anniversary.
Too hot for TV.
Lord Pertwee, welcome.
Pleasure to be here, Harry. I'm a big fan.
That's all right, John. At ease, at ease.
Exterminate! Exterminate!
It's my arch enemy, Davros.
It's not actually Davros, John. It's half grandmother, half Dalek, Nana Hill. Davros was never as frightening as Nana, John. Nana Hill, get your lips off Jon Pertwee. Sorry, John. Sorry.
That's quite all right, Harry. Do you know I haven't come across such a powerful kiss since I had a smack her from a sea devil?
Exterminate! Exterminate!
Nana, Mum, would you please get Nana off? Please.
Look, perhaps if I was to sing Nana a Venusian lullaby, that might help to calm her down a bit.
Well, if you think it might help, John.
Yes. Let me try.
Yes.
Lokida pa menin klatsch. Haroon, Haroon, Haroon. Suplida fa dolibach. Haroon, Haroon, Haroon.
Seems to have worked.
Certainly.
Too hot for TV.
What is this?
Well, we all know of Harry Hill, right?
Well, yes, but I wonder whether we should explain for perhaps listeners in other countries who Harry Hill is, because I'm not sure he transcends the oceans.
What do you mean? He's made a film and everything.
True.
Well, Harry Hill now is... This is going to sound like I'm reducing him. Harry Hill fundamentally is a stand-up comic who has also done sketch comedy and has become quite a go-to television personality, particularly on the back of fronting a thing that was called Harry Hill's TV Burp, in which he would dismantle television that was on at the time and in sketch form or in kind of spoken form and with interviews, he would turn a satirical and kind of affectionate eye onto contemporary television and ridicule it. And I first became aware of Harry Hill much later than the radio show that we're going to talk about now. When he was on Channel 4, he had a very successful, though I think also very cheap television show, which is sometimes referred to as Harry Hill's TV show, but actually was just called Harry Hill. And it was around that I was in the sixth form, and he was doing comedy that was very counterculturally whimsical There was nothing nasty about it. It was joyously silly. And even at the time, I think I could see very well that it was pretty hit or miss.
Yeah.
But in his TV show, there would be something. There would be at least one thing that was so just sort of naturally, joyously funny. And I was into silly. I was into the ridiculous at the time. So the fact that there was this guy with big pair of glasses and he used to wear huge collars, so his balding head would sort of disappear into his shirt, being genuinely kind of joyously silly. For me at that age, that went a very, very long way. And he is also kind of, I guess, a bit old-fashioned in that he had that kind of Morecambe and Wise thing of he'd break into song, and it was knowingly old-fashioned. It was a little bit of a piss take, and you get that in the radio shows we're going to discuss as well, where that kind of end of the pier vaudeville style is slightly sent up, but at the same time as being wholeheartedly committed to. And what became suddenly very clear in one of the episodes of this TV show that was broadcast in 1997, I think, was there was a little bit of Doctor Who fan in there. He had a running gag, and Harry Hill was always about repeated gags. There'd be sections, characters would come back every time, and catchphrases, and the structure was always the same. And one of his running gags was he would have a celebrity, and we're not talking A-list celebrity, we're talking whoever he could get, really. It was quite often people like Ian Lavender, or it would be someone from a soap opera, or it might be Bill Pertwee. But in one episode, he had Peter Davison, and the joke was always, such and such a celebrity sings songs by such and such band, and the joke was just a completely improbable combination of former Dad's Army actor singing something that was in the charts at the time, and it was Peter Davison sings Pulp, and he had Davison sitting there. I mean, I think Peter Davison was probably quite a catch for that programme, though I can't imagine that Davison would have done it in his Campion days.
This was around the time where Davison had split up from Sandra Dickinson and was having a very expensive divorce, and so he was taking all sorts of stuff that he probably wouldn't normally have taken.
Right. Well, I'm glad that he took it, because first of all, watching Peter Davison strumming a guitar and singing Pulp is genuinely funny. But unlike his other guests, because he would kind of squander his guests, well, you could if it was Ian Lavender. They're not going to be in any of the rest of the show. It is literally just Ian Lavender kind of singing some songs. But Peter Davison suddenly is in a sketch, and he's in a sketch with an actual real-life Cyberman from the TV series. And I think the way it starts off, and it's Davison. I mean, I've not watched this recently. I'm stretching the memory back here, but it starts off and Davison is talking to someone off camera, and he's saying, well, it's just that you happen to be trying to take over the universe and I happen to be trying to stop you. And then it cuts to an actual Earthshock style Cyberman going, oh, so it was nothing personal like. I mean, it's not a very funny joke, but it was funny because it was completely unexpected. And then Peter Davison is in I think a Star Trek sketch or something like that. Certainly there was always a musical number at the end, and I think they did it as a kind of Starship Enterprise. So you've got these references to Doctor Who start creeping in, and the Cybermen certainly came back in some later episodes of Harry Hill's show.
Yeah.
Now, we whiz back to 1993. I've never heard of Harry Hill, but Harry Hill is doing his first series of Harry Hill's Fruit Corner, which was a radio series that ran for 4 series, and his first only had 4 episodes. And again, it's a series of characters and catchphrases, and every episode that basically the same thing happens. It's interesting listening to this first series because it's not what his radio show became, which was, by the end, slightly more based on his stand-up routines, and there were longer sections of him talking. In these early days, he wheels on a character and does a couple of lines, and then he's on to the next thing. It's much more based on surreal little moments. For that reason, it's a bizarre listen. And I find it very listenable because, as I said, it's hit or miss. But if it's a miss, it's fine because the next thing happens a few seconds later. It's just one thing after another. It's got a kind of anarchic quality that I don't think any other radio was doing at the time. It's almost a kind of goon show level of, we're just going to throw a load of things in there.
See what works, see what sticks, see what doesn't.
And I would say that these are all available on YouTube and downloadable from unofficial sources. And it's worth a listen, because I do think that Harry Hill's surreal humour, for all that he had very visual ideas, they were never particularly satisfactorily visualised on the tiny budget of a TV show. Whereas as a radio show, he's able to do these things that involve singing earthworms and celebrity characters singing. There's one where he has in a later radio show Alec Guinness singing Pulp, which is clearly not Alec Guinness, but he's got someone doing an impersonation, and that's really good fun. And I think that probably Harry Hill's greatest work as a comedian is his stand-up, but in a different medium, I think his radio show is far more successful than he ever was on television, because you can do anything on radio, and he absolutely commits to that and does that. And in this first series, there are themes. So going back to that vaudeville thing, he's got the Cliff Ranger Singers, who are a very deliberately naff vocal group singing jingles in a kind of naff 1950s way. And every episode, he'll announce the theme and they will announce it by singing it. And the first episode is Monks and Nuns, and later on he has Police and Thieves, and in the final episode of the series he has Doctors and Nurses, which, again, an episode which sneaks in a Doctor Who joke, because he has a doctor who has a sonic hedgehog. He's combining two different ideas there, but that's quite fun. But in episode 2, the theme is Lords and Ladies. And what happens in these radio shows is that he has a load of pretend characters come on in the theme. So he introduces various other lords and ladies. So we have Lady Stevens, who describes herself as Lady of the Cats. We've got Lord Hee, the brother of Lord Haw, the Nazi propagandist. And Lord and Lady Muck come on. And then, as is the format of the show, he then introduces an actual guest star at the end. And in this episode, it is the Time Lord, Doctor Who, as played by Jon Pertwee, who was someone who was, at the time, everywhere.
And in character a lot of the time.
And this must have been on before The Archers, because my mum was an avid Archer, still is an avid Archers listener. Stopped watching Coronation Street, but never weaned her off The Archers. But before The Archers, there would always be a comedy segment, and I remember catching this when it went out, which was November the 18th, and I had no idea who Harry Hill was. I didn't know what the show was, but I remember Jon Pertwee coming on, because my ears pricked up, because he was everywhere. He was on the television, he was on the radio, and it was another thing with Jon Pertwee, and obviously I turned up the volume, and it was a Doctor Who sketch.
I mean, it's brilliant to hear him. I was a big Harry Hill fan. I mean, I guess I still am. I saw him live a few years ago, actually, when he was promoting his book, I think it was. But anyway, I saw him live a few times during the late 90s, early noughties, and I knew he was a Doctor Who fan. I'd never heard this before. There was another sketch he appears on in a show called The Skyvers, another radio show, which I'd had recorded off the radio by my uncle, which I used to listen to every now and then, because it was a tiny bit of Doctor Who, new Doctor Who. Even if it was sending up the concept, it was still just like, much like here. But he is somebody I associate heavily with Doctor Who, because you're right, he is a fan. And I think Peter Davison said, I remember being at a convention around the time, and he said at the end of the series, he was given a wrap gift, and it was a full-size Dalek. And there's a later TV show he does where he has Nicholas Courtney as the Brigadier in character.
He does, yes. Yeah.
And there is also I talked about this on a recent episode of this podcast, but there is a game based on No, it wasn't on this. It was on an episode of the Maran Chess Club, Luke Sims-Jenkins thing, because he has a game based on them throwing a chair through a door in Terminus in one of his
yes, he does.
TV
Yeah.
burps.
That's right.
He gets Peter Davison to try and recreate the famous or not so famous moment to most of the bewildered audience, I imagine.
But it becomes a running gag in that episode, doesn't it? Because he has various characters throwing chairs through doors, and they always stick in exactly the same way they do in Terminus.
Yeah, so he's one of them.
Well, and you can tell this, I mean, long before Jon Pertwee enters this episode, he introduces Nana Hill. So he's got various family members. He's got his big brother Alan. He's got his adopted son Alan. He's got Mama. He's got Dad. He's got Nana Hill, who the running gag with her is she's always test driving a different kind of vehicle. And in this one, she's test driving one of Terry Nation's Daleks, which he announces as the powerful Gold King Dalek, which shows a kind of a level of fandom, I think, that goes beyond just a Dalek's a comic icon thing.
My dad still to this day calls my childhood best friend his little adopted son, after Harry Hill used to call Alan his little adopted son. But anyway, we digress. So Pertwee's in this for what, 3 or 4 minutes, something like that? He shows up at the end. Always wonderful to hear Jon Pertwee. Anything exciting happen? How does he fit into the story?
So there's a callback to Nana Hill because he comes on and Nana comes on and John immediately assumes that it's his arch rival Davros, and it has to be explained that it's actually Nana Hill. Nana Hill has a very powerful kiss, and she tries to kiss Jon Pertwee. He then pacifies her by singing a Venusian lullaby. I mean, it's that specific.
He does get some of the words wrong, though, Jon Pertwee, when he sings his Venusian lullaby. Or is it a different one? Who knows?
Who knows how many Venusian lullabies there are?
Or for copyright reasons, that you didn't want the Brian Hales estate on the phone going, that's my Venusian lullaby.
And then Harry explains that his dad has always wanted to face off against Doctor Who as his arch rival, the Master. And it goes into a very brief and very undisciplined, but nevertheless authentic Doctor Who sketch. And they do an adventure involving the Sea Devils trying to take over the tourist industry in Great Yarmouth. And it's very slight, except that it clearly is informed. So Harry Hill plays the Brigadier, whose role is to come in and say, there you are, Doctor. And Jon Pertwee says, well, what is it? And he says, no, I just wanted to say, there you are, Doctor. And he keeps coming back and saying it later on. He's got Jon Pertwee doing all of his tricks. So he comes on and starts off by doing his Wurzel Gummidge voice.
Yeah.
Sorry, Harry, wrong voice. And then towards the end, he needs to borrow some money and he does the kind of his Navy Lark mad gibbering. So it's an opportunity for Jon Pertwee to kind of show off some of his comic chops, which he duly does. And there's no attempt to kind of tell a story. On the other hand, how many bits of Doctor Who iconography can you kind of throw in and have fun with in a couple of minutes? It turns out quite a lot.
Absolutely, and especially when you think this is the anniversary month and there's Doctor Who everywhere at this point. When we have anniversaries now, we're very used to them going, and Doctor Who's going to show up in loads of other shows and there's a TARDIS forced in somewhere or something like this. But this is someone who actually gives a shit about the show and is just trying to do a little fun skit to celebrate the anniversary. Do you think it says anything about where Doctor Who is in the public consciousness at this point?
I think it's really interesting that Jon Pertwee is the kind of go-to doctor in 1993. There are other doctors he could have got. Clearly Davison hadn't yet gone through the divorce, so would have been less available. But I'm sure he could have got McCoy to do something.
Absolutely, but I think John is the most iconic one.
He's the iconic living Doctor, isn't he? Yeah.
And Tom's not really interested in doing Doctor Who related stuff really at that point.
At that point, absolutely not, no.
He's in medics and he's got his own thing. And he doesn't mind doing a thing for John Nathan Turner because they get to go out on the piss in Soho afterwards. But I think he's keen in the public eye to not necessarily associate himself with that role.
Yeah.
So we get Jon Pertwee, who has this wonderful last hurrah in the last few years of his life, not just here, but all over the place, telling the same stories, sending up the character, and just generally being a showman.
And I think that, as we were saying, they'd repeated 2 of his stories the previous year. Who is the star of Dimensions in Time? I mean, it's framed as a McCoy story, but he's not in it very much. And actually, it's kind of Jon Pertwee who owns the thing and is playing it for real.
Absolutely. And we've got Planet of the Daleks repeating about this time as well.
Another repeat. When I got to Jon Pertwee in my marathon, it felt like coming home. I suddenly realised just how much his had been the Doctor. And there were quite a few on VHS by that time as well. Everyone seemed to have a copy of Day of the Daleks for some reason. And so it was just a Doctor who I immediately kind of felt at home with.
the Pertwees and the early Bakers were filling the video shelves long before you could get a load of McCoys or a Davison or a Colin Baker, because those were the key archive properties, and that's what a bit of vintage Doctor Who for people, that's what they remembered and that's what they could sell.
It says a lot, I think, that a mainstream primetime Radio 4 comedy would be making these obscure references. I mean, not very obscure, but fairly obscure and fairly specific references, and drawing in a lot of the imagery of specific Third Doctor stories, and for a mainstream audience, and that's all accepted. I think it says a little bit about how present Doctor Who was at the time.
Yeah, and how much nostalgia there was for it. We're not quite at the stage where it's thought of as wobbly sets and shitty monsters. It's still, I remember Doctor Who, it was great in the 70s.
Yeah, very much that.
Is there much more you want to say about Fruit Corner?
Not really, only that I would recommend going out and just listening to the whole lot. The way it evolves is really interesting, and I think it gets better as it goes on and really does become completely unhinged by the fourth series.
Excellent.
And one of the funniest things that Harry Hill has done, I would say.
I should say this, actually. I didn't say at the beginning. I've never heard this before. I like Harry Hill. I thought I'd consume most of these things, but I only learnt this existed a few months ago, and I'd sort of clocked in my mind, I must do this at some point. And then when you mentioned it, I was like, great, we're going for it. So, is it a clanger, a banger, or an average meander?
I think the episode as a whole is probably an average meander, but do you know what? I think the actual cameo appearance is a banger.
There we go. It's a banger from me too. 3 bangers. Great to relive some of the early 90s and discovering a show for the first time, and discovering a little bit of new stuff from that era as well with this.
Too hot for TV.
James, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. It's been a great pleasure.
And if people want to find you on the internet, where can they find you?
You can find me on Blue Sky as James Lark. You can find me on Instagram as the slightly less obvious Works of Lark. But most excitingly of all, I have a podcast which is called Neurotic Literature. And the third season is, as we record, about to go live. So these are short stories, fairly quirky, comic in nature for the most part, a little bit dark in some places, unexpected, unpredictable. What I'm really trying to do is fuck with AI algorithms by putting stuff on the internet that makes no sense at all. But people tell me that they enjoy my stories and my readings of them. So search that out. It's called Neurotic Literature, and it's available from your podcast platform of choice.
Amazing. Well, I will search that out, and I encourage everybody out there to do the same. And I would love to have you back here sometime to talk about some neurotic Doctor Who literature,
Yes.
if we can find any. Next time, I'll be joined by Mark Rawlins, and we'll be talking about the spin-off audio The Piper's Lament, starring a character very similar to Jamie, and the Rose Tyler Dimension Canon audio The Flood. But until next time, I've been Dylan.
I've been James.
And this has been Doctor Who Too Hot for TV.
I tell you what, why don't we all meet up again sometime in the future?
Oh, that would be great, yes.
How about the year 2000?
What, when we're fully grown?
Be there, 2:00.
By the fountain down the road, where we were born within an hour of each other.
Our mother said we could be sister and brother.
Your name is Deborah.
Deborah?
It never suited you. Deborah, do you recall? Your house was very small, with wood chip on the wall. And when I came round to call, you didn't notice me at all. And I said, let's all meet up in the year 2000. Won't it be great when we're all fully grown? Be there at 2:00 by the fountain down the road.
Doctor Who. Too hot for TV.
Captain, this is Liddell, checking cargo bay 12. I'll stay in contact. Okay. Oh no. We've lost another embryo, Captain. No, I think there's...
Doctor, a dead man.
Let me see. Head wound, dead 2 minutes.
So hadn't we better?
Okay, you two, put your hands in the air. We didn't kill this man. We'll see what the captain has to say about that.
What's going on here, Doctor?
I don't know, Ace, but I smell something evil. That's 5 embryos missing and 3 dead crew. Really? What's the name of this ship? The Biofreighter Mitre. Where are you heading? Earth. Who the hell are you? These are the suspects, sir. Take them to the brig. I'll be down to question them later. Before you do, examine the broken glass on the tanks that contain the missing embryos.
So why are they carrying a ship full of embryos?
Earth needs them. After the Draconian Wars, their genetic pools become a muddy puddle. These embryos are grown on a bio-colony, genetically blank. It's a big business in this time period.
Blank?
Yes. They'll be imprinted with the genes of their foster parents. Valuable little creatures. Get in there. Ah. I see there's already someone here. Yeah, and he just struck lucky. He's got company. He suffered a vast trauma. Look. Totally withdrawn.
That smell, is it?
It's me. Numismation gas. My cells are mutating. But why? Oops.
He's trying to tell you something, Professor.
Oops. Doctor. Ah, Captain.
I had the shards examined. The flask was broken from the inside.
Good. Now I'll need access to your medical lab.
But...
You have got a medical lab?
Yes, but...
Oh, and I've got a job for Ace, to give her some guns, some men, and this prisoner.
What?
He's your guide.
Well, Doctor, what's happening to my cargo?
I'm more worried about what's happening to me at the moment. My cells. Time Lord bodies are very malleable under the right conditions, like an embryo. On a cellular level, I'm changing. It's as if I can hear a signal. Activate the distress beacon. All frequencies.
Done. Now, would you mind telling me why, Doctor?
What's in there?
Airlock.
Let's have a look. Be careful, we could be in for trouble. The airlock's open.
the Daleks is in force.
These prisoners are to be exterminated.
Wait!
You are the doctor.
Yes. So, the Daleks have been directing a modulated radiation beam at this ship from their own craft, mutating the embryos, and me as well. They're turning the embryos into Daleks.
That's horrible.
Yes, but I blocked the signal with the distress beacon, so they decided to take matters into their own suckers.
And they've come here. But why do the Daleks want the embryos?
The conquest of humanity has eluded us.
Until now, but that means you want...
The human factor.
Again?
Silence!
So, when you reactivate the beam, I'll turn into a mutant and help your toddlers pilot the ship into Dalek space.
Yes.
I assume they'll untie me first.
But why are they leaving me here?
I don't want to disturb you, but, I think you might be food for the Dalek embryos. Ah, you're leaving.
Yes.
Good riddance.
Doctor, we can't let them use kids like this. What can we do?
Do? Oh, I don't know. I wonder what it's like being a Dalek.
Doctor?
Oh, all right. You can come out now, Captain.
Brilliant!
They've gone then. Yes, they're taking off in their saucer. Typical Dalek one-track mind. They were so obsessed with me that they didn't think of the captain who hid when I went to find the Daleks. It's a pity the ship isn't armed.
Doctor, that smell.
Yes, they've started the beam up again. We haven't very long. I know you can hear me. I'm one of you. You must obey. He's created some sort of telepathic link. You must
The
obey.
saucer's taking off.
He's turning into a Dalek.
He can't be.
Let's go to the control room. What's he doing? Obey. X. Start.
Exterminate! Exterminate!
So, trying to turn me into a Dalek was another mistake. One of the mutant embryos telepathically obeyed my superior brain power, and I persuaded it to take over the casing of the Dalek Ace dealt with.
And you told it to exterminate the control panel.
Yes, and the saucer, out of control, exploded. Thank you for saving my cargo, Doctor. Yes, there'll be normal children now, bar the odd nightmare, of course.
Come on, Doctor.
Goodbye, Doctor. Lions, this is the captain. Get us underway. We've got delivery to complete.